Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing a pen from Kaweco. If you're not familiar with Kaweco, it is a German brand. It says here Germany since 1883. So it's a brand with a lot of history. It's had different owners and all that kind of stuff over the years. And they've got a long heritage of making some really nice pens. And the one I'm looking at today is kind of no exception, and it harkens back to a lot of their their heritage and stuff as well. So you can see it comes in this nice metal tin, and we open it up and there's a couple of stickers and things like that. And then we get the pen, and the pen we are looking at today is this, the Kaweco Original. Now, there are two models of the Original, the 250, which this is, and the 060, or 060, which are both basically numbered off the nib that they use. So this Original here, the 250, uses the Bock 250 nib, which is the number 6 size nib that they use. So I'm going to talk about the parts and features of this pen. I'm going to do a writing sample, talk about some pros and cons, all of that kind of stuff. So as I said, it's modeled around the 250 nib, and it comes in extra fine through to double broad traditionally, and it uses that number 6 nib, which Kaweco doesn't use regularly. It's been used on things like the Supra and I think the Elite, but it's really, most Kaweco pens like the Sport and the Special and the Pacquiao and all those kinds of things use a nib around the 060 size from Bock. And so that model of pen is slimmer and slightly smaller than this one. It is made of anodized aluminium and is finished with a matte finish, and it's very nice. It's got a simple Kaweco Original Germany there, the typical Kaweco clip design sort of there, and then the Kaweco medallion in the top of the pen. This is a really simple pen. It harkens back to a pen, to pens from the 1950s that Kaweco made. It's a classic Kaweco octagonal design. It's got these little peaked finials and stuff. It's reminiscent of the Sport and the Pacquiao and all of that. And so it is a very sort of tried and true, in a way, Kaweco concept. As you can see, you've got the medallion in the top there, and then it swells out slightly to this little band which holds the clip in place. It's a nice clip. It's sort of relatively firm, but very usable. It's got a nice sort of gap between, so you can fit it through most pen cases, things like that. Then we get this octagonal body coming out of the round. You see these like little points where it sort of fades into those facets, which is nice. The facet will step down onto the barrel of the pen. Facets continue down, and then once again round out there to that little peaked fitting on the end there. It is a screw cap and comes off in 1 3/4 turns, and reveals nice smooth threads. Not a huge step down, little O-ring there for it to lock down onto. A fairly straight section, which is kind of nice, and it's a nice length section. And now I've got here the medium steel nib, the 250 there, and a simple plastic feed. The pen is standard international. You are not going to fit a full-size converter in here, so those little piston converters for the Sport, things like that, are going to fit in here. Even though it is standard international, Kaweco, particularly with converters, there's a bit of a weird area where some work, some don't, and of course Kaweco converters don't work and everything because there's like a little bit more square at the front. I've just got a cartridge in here, diamine terracotta ink. Nice threads to lock that down. It's a good size, it's a small pen, but it is a good size small pen, if that makes sense, because that section has a nice length. It sits comfortably in the hand. Unfortunately, the pen doesn't post super deep or super securely. I suggest using this pen unposted if you can. It's a much more reliable way of the pen sitting in your hand. So time for a size comparison now, and I've got it there alongside the Lamy Safari. It's kind of like the standard, but I want to show it alongside a number of other Kaweco pens for particular reasons. Now, of course, in terms of the Sport, I'm going to show it alongside the AL because it is the similar material, and you can see it's a bigger pen, but you can see a lot of similarities in terms of the design. I have the Supra here, which I'm going to use it alongside for things like the nib, and then just quick sort of size comparisons of the capped versions of some of these other pens. We have the Student here, so you can see it is a smaller pen than the Student. It is a pen on the smaller size. It's a bit bigger than a pocket pen, but it is smaller. Here we have the Kaweco, which is one of the biggest pens Kaweco has produced, and uses a smaller nib still, but a bigger body pen, and it is much bigger there than the Student. The Lilliput, just because, you know, the Supra's tiny brother, you can see it's much bigger than the Lilliput. And then another octagonal pen, we've got the Special here, which is the same sort of material, slightly more glossy finish, slimmer but longer pen. Another pen I want to show it alongside is the Sailor ProGiz, is the standard one, because they're actually not dissimilar sized pens. It's probably just a little bit smaller. The advantage of the Sailor, of course, is the fact that it posts very, very well. Now looking at all these pens uncapped, you can see once again it's a similar sort of size to the ProGiz. It's got a slightly bigger nib. It's still shorter than the Safari. Obviously, you don't necessarily write with the Sport version, the Sport unposted. And this is the Supra at its sort of, you can see the number 6 size nib there at its full sort of version, so with the insert in the middle of it. But you can see where it fits amongst those pens. So now we have these pens posted, and I haven't posted the Original yet, simply because, like, alongside the Sport, you see at this length, it kind of has a similar sort of size. Of course, once you line up the ends of the section, it's considerably shorter than the posted Sport because it's got that longer nib. And then if we'll just post this now just for the sake of the exercise, seeing as though it doesn't post as well, but when you do, that's the kind of length you get. As I said, the Supra here in its full extended version with the number 6 nib, as opposed to, like, I suppose it's a number 4 nib that things like the Sport use. So what are the dimensions of the Original? Well, when it's capped, it's 128 millimeters. So it's a small low pen. The Safari coming in around the 140, for instance. Uncapped, it's 122. So for a lot of people, this is going to be too small in the hand. And of course, there is also the smaller version of this, the 060, which would be smaller again. But for, you know, I find this on the smallest side of comfortable. I can write with this quite nicely, you know, and it's very, very well balanced. If you do post it, it comes in at about 169 millimeters. So it is, you know, getting up to quite a decent length, but as I said, it doesn't post super securely. The section there is about 9.5 millimeters. And the pen weighs 26 grams, 17 in the body, 9 in the cap. So if you do post it, it doesn't necessarily back weight it, but the weight and the balance in the hand unposted, I think, is very good. Time for a writing sample now. And here we have the Kaweco Original. I'm going to say this is the 250 because that's sort of the version it is, with a number 6. Say 250 once again, Bock steel nib, and I have this in the medium here, which is my nib size of choice. The ink I have in this is Diamine Terracotta, which is one of my favorite Diamine inks and absolutely stunning. Let's do the writing. This pen actually writes very smooth. Traditionally, I have found nibs made by Bock to be slightly drier than Jowo, and this is no exception to that. It's not a super wet writer, but it is generous, and particularly for a Bock. It's very smooth. It lays down what I consider to be a fairly standard medium line, perhaps slightly on the, you know, sort of narrower side of medium. But it writes very well, it writes very reliably. Totally legible, but quick writing, not an issue there whatsoever. Reverse writing, it's not the best. Like, you can barely make that out. This is not a Flex Nib, it is not soft, it's fairly stiff. You can open the tines up slightly and get a little bit more ink down, but it's not a Flex Nib, it's not a Soft Nib. This is just a very nice, well-tuned, very kind of, you know, simple, good, everyday writing pen. And I think that's kind of one of its strengths. It's not a particularly flashy design. It's a small pen, it's compact, so it fits nicely in, you know, in your pencil case or your bag or your pocket. I tend to carry it around in a little pen sleeve here I've got one of these tweed ones from Rickshaw Bag Works. I carry it around in that. It's very comfortable. It's a nice size for that. It's got a good clip. But yeah, this reliable writing that's smooth, that's consistent. I've never had an issue with starvation. I've never had an issue with hard starts or anything like that. It's just a very, very nice pen. And Kaweco nibs nibs on Kaweco pens have had some issues over the years, but I can honestly say with this one, I've not had a single problem. So let's talk about the pros and cons. We'll start with the cons. The only real cons I have here are the fact that, firstly, this is a standard international pen and it comes with a cartridge when you buy it. Just a blue Kaweco cartridge, which I always use first, and that was fine. But it doesn't come with a converter. And at a pen at this price point, which we'll find out in just to hear about just a second, not coming with a converter, once again, I say this almost every time, it's kind of a bit of a sin, I think. You know, we're paying good money for pens here. When you buy this pen at this price point, and I think you deserve to get a converter. That's just my thoughts. The only other issue is going to be a personal one, and that for some people is the length of the pen. As the pen doesn't post particularly well, it is a small pen in the hand. It is on the shorter side. And so for people with particularly large hands or people that want longer, you know, larger pens, this is going to be one that may not quite work out for you. This pen retails in Australia from around the 190 to around the 220 mark, depending on where you go. In the US, 120 to 140. I've seen either side of that slightly, and you know, if you get it on special or if people have particularly big markups, it's going to be on either side. But that's a kind of rough price point you can sort of be looking at. And I think at that point, it is a nice pen. It is a well-made pen. It writes beautifully. A steel nib without a converter at that price point, you are pushing it. But I think if you got this pen, if you were after a pen of this size, this kind of pen, I don't think you'd be disappointed. It would be a really cool pen for more color versions. I'll pull up that AL Sport again, like that red, like this pen in that, or a really dark blue or a forest green, or as I've said about other pens, you know, like a nice sort of, you know, anodized purple. Those kinds of colors would look great in this pen. It's a great model for that. They've gone with black because that is tradition and that is like a great way to start. Let's see where they go with it. I also really think that the balance and the size of the pen is good for a smaller pen. As I said, if you're familiar with the size of something like the Sailor Pro Gear here, then it's the sort of size you'll be familiar with. And of course, what is a fountain pen without its nib? And if that nib doesn't write well, what's the point? And this one writes beautifully. It's smooth, it's got great flow. I love the fact that it's number 6 size nib, so the distance between your fingers and the page is very nice and helps to be relaxed. It's got a section that's big enough that you don't have to pinch it at 9.5 millimeters. It's just a nicely thought out pen, and I think it's a pen that sort of will hopefully stay in the Kaweco output and in their lineup. And I think we'll achieve some nice results for the company and for those of you who decide that this is a pen for you. So thank you for watching my review of the Kaweco Original 250 model fountain pen. Hope you found this video interesting and useful. Please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, all that stuff. Please get in touch using any of the platforms listed below or comment here. Drop me an email. If you've got a way you'd like to support the channel by sponsoring a review or providing an item for review, I would really love to hear from you. It's your support that makes this channel possible. A big thank you to Kaweco for sending this pen out for review. Their support of my channel has been really lovely the last couple of years and has allowed me to provide videos for you and hopefully help you make a decision about this pen. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.